Hey everyone, welcome to our Nautobot community meeting for November 2022. Nautobot 1.5 is here, and can you believe it? We already have a few patch releases out the door. Our agenda for today is to cover the new ability to mark a relationship as required, recent updates to our dark mode theme, a feature/bug fix was introduced in 1.5.2 that now allows you to trigger jobs that require files over the API, recently renamed classes and vixens, as well as our new Nautobot's apps API, and the Nautobot UI view set supporting changelog and notes routes. And our product owner has a quick preview of what's to come in Nautobot 2.0 next year. We have a lot to talk about today, so let's get started. First up, required relationships.
In this video, I will be demonstrating new functionality which will enable us to mark and enforce a relationship as being required. So first things first, we'll create a new relationship by going to Extensibility, Relationships, and then Add here. So we want this to be a relationship between circuits and devices, so a many-to-many from circuits to devices. So we'll name it as such, here. Circuits to devices. Okay, to make this required, we need to select either one of these two options here, so source objects must implement or destination objects must implement. For this demonstration, we will enforce on the source side, so source type will be circuit and destination type will be devices. So this means that having this selected means that all circuits must implement this relationship when they're created or when they're edited. So let's save that quickly. So now we'll go to create a circuit. So here, so just select any old provider here, circuit ID, just any old one. Circuit type, active. And so if we go to create this, we'll notice that there's an error here. So the first error is circuits require at least one device, but no devices exist yet. So we'll have to create a device for this relationship. So let's go do that now. Let's just create another dummy device. So dummy device maybe. Device role, device type, any old thing, any old site, and status. Okay, so that should be enough there. Right. So there's the dummy device. So if I go click create again here on the circuit form, we'll notice there's only one error here now. So we just need to select a device. That's the enforcement of the relationship. So if we go to click create, you can see that we have now created a circuit type and that this relationship here was enforced. So we need to have at least one device associated with this circuit. This functionality also exists on bulk editing objects and bulk creating and bulk editing objects on the API.
Hi, my name's Gary, and I have a quick quality of life update to show you. This was released in version 1.4.5 of Nautobot, and it's an update to the dark theme. On the screen, you're looking at the old theme on the left and the new updated theme on the right. You can see the buttons and the labels have been updated, as well as the background colors. So if you've been avoiding the dark theme, I'd recommend you give it another shot. Thanks.
Hey everyone, my name is Brian. I wanted to show off one of the feature bugs that we fixed in Nautobot 1.5.2. Previously, in order to trigger a job that requires a file, whether it's via schedule or immediately, you could only do this through the web UI. So like before, you could go visit your job, click run and schedule, select your job data, select your files, click upload, and schedule it either immediately or in the future. However, this was limited only to the UI as we did not support natively multi-part forms in the API. That has now been fixed. In my example job, it takes two arguments, interval and my file, which is an integer var and a file var. And you can now trigger these with something as simple as a curl command. So I have everything already set up here with my authorization token for the API. If I press enter, I will get the JSON response that I would typically see over the API, which includes things like the job result as well as the current status. I can go visit my job results, see my most recent run, and see that I was able to successfully upload the file as well as parse the interval. Just for demonstration purposes, I will show the contents of my file. Now, unfortunately, the schema is slightly different for jobs triggered over the API with multi-part forms instead of JSON. And that is due to multi-part forms not supporting nested structures. We have thoroughly documented this in our API documentation. So if you go visit the API docs on your Nautobot instance, once you've upgraded, you'll be able to select the request body type, whether it's application JSON or multi-part form data. Again, application JSON will not accept file var input, the multi-part form data will. And you'll see the keywords that were typically at the top level directory before or in a dictionary, things like the schedule name and start time, have now been flattened and now begin with an underscore. This mimics how our web UI parses your input data for multi-part forms. You can see this demonstrated here. If I go into another example here, and you'll see that I have a schedule name, start time, as well as an interval selected for a future. Need to select a date after today's date or after the current time of my demonstration. And you will see my scheduled job response. You'll see that over here in the scheduled jobs. And you'll see the abstracted file reference as well as the payload that I sent over. You can obviously programmatically do this as well instead of just a curl. And for demonstration, I have Postman loaded up here to show off the payload as well as a code snippet that was auto-generated for, in this case, JavaScript or Node.js. Additional to our API documentation that you can find in your Nautobot install, you can also find other helpful information for triggering jobs over the API with file var data inside of our developer and user guide documentation. Thanks. Nautobot 1.5.2 has begun the work towards self-consistency we'd like to reach in next year's roadmap. In this release, we have continued renaming classes and mixins to be more indicative as to how they're supposed to be used. Use of existing class names will emit deprecation warnings, but because it will be some time before we will be removing the older names, we have gone ahead and disabled these messages by default. You can enable these messages to be emitted in your logs by setting the Nautobot log deprecation warnings environment variable to true. If you'd like to get a head start on adopting these new names, please be mindful that this will move up your minimum version to 1.5.2 and later, as they were not available in previous releases. Don't worry about using existing names if you must maintain backwards compatibility with earlier releases. Tentatively, the old names won't be removed until 2.3. Another self-consistency for naming in both code and documentation is the move to calling plugins apps. This moves the plugin config class to becoming Nautobot app config. In concert with these changes, we have also begun to publish the Nautobot apps API, a module where you can find all app-related extensibility features. This will help minimize anti-patterns such as importing a class or function from a file that is using it but not defining it, a fragile situation. This trusted interface will allow apps to become even more durable in the long run, as this provides an effective promise of verified tools app developers can import from. An example here makes import discovery much more developer-friendly, with all components being imported from a single module. We also made it easier to find the app developer documentation by making it a top-level documentation item in 1.5.2, called the App Developer Guide. We're only getting started enriching this documentation with tools, details, and best practices. One note around models. For app developers who are building their own models, primitives such as base model can be found in the apps module. However, if you're looking for existing Nautobot data models such as device, they will continue to be found under their respective apps like DSIM. Again, be mindful that adopting the new apps API will move your minimum version of Nautobot supported to 1.5.2 or later.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? My name is Han Lin, and I am one of the core team developers. Today, I'll be showcasing some of the changes we made to Nautobot UI ViewSet, more specifically, some of the enhancements we made to Nautobot UI ViewSet in this patch release. As a refresher, as to Nautobot UI ViewSet that was pushed out in 1.4, Nautobot UI ViewSet is intended for UI use only, and it is a plugin development tool that provides default Nautobot functionalities such as create, bulk create, update, partial update, bulk update, destroy, bulk destroy, retrieve, and list. Now we added 2 more functionalities. It should be available for all Nautobot core models, changelog and notes. So in order to use Nautobot UI ViewSet for your own plugin, you only need to inherit Nautobot UI ViewSet to your plugin model ViewSet, and also in your urls.py, inherit Nautobot UI ViewSet router to your own router. Of course, if you have any questions, you can consult our plugin development documentations. And also, there are concrete implementations available in the Nautobot Circuits app. And example plugin as part of the changes of this patch release, we converted example plugin all the models inside the app to use Nautobot UI ViewSet, just so that you can see in action in a barebone plugin development environment. So yeah, that's basically all the new changes made towards Nautobot UI ViewSet. Hopefully you enjoy this new feature, and I'll see you next time.
Hello, my name is John Anderson. I'm the product owner for Nautobot and a principal consultant at Network to Code. I wanted to take just a few minutes to go over with you our plans for Nautobot 2.0 and for the remainder of the 2.x train throughout the year 2023. Please note that this is a condensed version of a longer video that we will be publishing as a standalone entity that will go in much more depth in these topics. So please, if you're interested, do check that out. 2.0 and the 2.x train will focus heavily on a UI overhaul. So if you are a user of Nautobot, you know very well that the Nautobot UI is a bit dated. And that you can pretty easily identify some of the old technology that's being used. So you will be seeing a fresh coat of paint as a part of 2.0, but much more than that, we're going to be taking a fundamental look at the user experience in the application. So we'll be spending a lot of time looking at what are the flows and the areas of the application that you use the most on a day-to-day basis. What are the areas that cause you the most pain points? Things that take number of clicks to complete. How can we reduce that strain and effort on your part to make the application as easy to use as possible, and so forth. All the while making sure that we remain a app development platform for network automation, so making sure that the new UI does seamlessly work with the existing plugin ecosystem for applications that are built on top of Nautobot. Next up will be an overhaul of jobs. So there's a lot of great functionality that we're looking for throughout the entirety of 2023 with jobs, things like native multiprocessing support for resource-based workflows, so distributing out network automation jobs where you need to connect to potentially your entire device inventory, making great enhancements there. Looking at job chaining workflows, so chaining multiple jobs together based on business logic and so forth into consumable components and making that look great within the UI as well. File inputs and outputs within jobs. But primarily what you'll see in 2.0 is some changes if you're a job author will be most notably where you'll see these things. We're going to be changing some of the interfaces within jobs to make them significantly easier to work with. So the focus in 2.0 will be making the critical breaking changes that are necessary to support that feature set that we want to enable throughout the entirety of 2023. Next up will be a total refactor of the IPAM data model. Again, if you're a Nautobot user today, and especially if you're using the IPAM data model at any relative scale, dataset-wise, you know that there are some problematic areas of that data model from a usability and a performance standpoint. So we're going to be making a lot of enhancements here, consolidation of some of the models. Please note we will be maintaining the same level of functionality that we have today. It's just going to work in slightly different ways in different areas, hopefully all for the better from a usability standpoint, and again addressing a lot of performance considerations when you do have larger data sets involved here. So taking a look at the IPAM hierarchy within the data models, separating out statuses versus types for prefixes for example. And then a fresh look at the utilization and allocation calculation logic that is often broken today or just doesn't work in the ways that you would expect it to. So we'll be looking at what those fundamental use cases are and trying to address those problems. Next up is the app development experience. So as you know, Nautobot is a network automation platform on top of which plugins and applications can be built that service specific needs and use cases. And those are developed by different teams. Network to Code has a lot of open source content related to the Nautobot app ecosystem. And what we're going to be working on is providing simplified interfaces for developing apps and plugins, and a really big focus on the documentation for doing so. So we want to make it as easy as possible to consume these application interfaces and be able to get you up and running with your own development efforts as easily as possible. So kind of the path ahead here. So as I mentioned, these plans and these ambitions stretch throughout the entirety of 2023 through all of what we call the 2.x train. So that will be multiple minor releases. 2.0, specifically the first in that train, will be a focus on the UI overhaul and the critical breaking changes that are necessary to realize the totality of that vision for 2.x throughout all of 2023. So expect less from a end user perspective to be included in the first 2.0 release, but it opens the door to everything that we want to do in 2023. Now, don't get me wrong, you will see a lot of performance improvements, certainly the UI overhaul in 2.0 and so forth, but a lot of the aforementioned functionality and the themes that I just went over will be iteratively released throughout the year 2023. So ultimately, we'll culminate in a new LTM or long-term maintenance release towards the end of 2023, at which point our current LTM release 1.5 will be sunset, and the 2.x train will be the path forward. You can keep up to date with all of this. I'm going to be continuing to do more of these higher level roadmap and backlog presentations going forward, but you can keep up to date with what we're doing at a fine-grained level through GitHub. Everything that we do is in a transparent nature through our Agile backlog that is tracked in GitHub. It's a link to our project here with tabs specific to the entire project backlog, the 2.0 specific backlog, and you can also keep up to date with what we're doing in individual sprints as we're going through our development efforts. The milestones in GitHub are also a great way to keep up to date with the scope for specific minor releases. And as a final note here, please do keep in mind that this backlog is subject to change. Anything in this presentation, may get pushed around timeline-wise. We are committed to doing all of this work. We think it's necessary and for the benefit of the greater network automation community. Just timelines may shift around, as needs change and so forth, technical constraints and that kind of thing. But I do hope that you found this presentation very helpful. Thank you for the time, and I look forward to providing more of these sorts of updates to the community in the future. Take care.
We're really excited to be carving new paths with Nautobot 2.0, and we're already hard at work paving them. John has also put together a more detailed presentation of not only 2.0, but some of the roadmap plans for 2.1, 2.2, and beyond. You can find a link to that video in the description below. We also had a few other things we wanted to talk about in today's community meeting. Yesterday, we crossed over 1,000 members in our Nautobot Slack channel. We can't thank you, our wonderful community, enough for joining us on this journey and helping us make this amazing network source of truth and automation platform. As we set our sights on 2023 and Nautobot v2, we want to help you all adopt some of the significant changes that will be coming in the new release. We wanted to remind you that as soon as we have the changes finalized and merge into our code base, you'll start seeing our upgrade guides be updated with migration information, both code and data related. As you saw earlier, we take great strides in trying to provide backwards compatible changes, but that might not always be the case, and these guides will be the place to go to know what to do before installing Nautobot 2.0 and beyond. We have also been overhauling our best practice guides to help you know some good pitfalls to avoid, as well as how to write your app code to be more durable to future changes. Thank you all for watching this month's community meeting. Happy automating.